Welcome to This Explainer. So picture this. You're staring down hundreds of hours of raw, chaotic footage, interviews, B-roll, background noise, literally just scattered pieces of reality. And the stakes? They're sky high. How on earth do you take that massive, messy mountain and sculpt it into a tight, ethical, and legally protected documentary? Well, it takes way more than just hitting record. It's a rigorous, structured process. And today, we're going to map out exactly how the pros actually pull it off. Here's the roadmap for This Explainer. We're looking at 1. Finding your documentary style. 2. Ethics and informed consent. 3. Shaping the story arc. 4. The post-production pipeline. And finally, 5. Fair use and copyright. Let's get right into it. All right, Section 1. Finding your documentary style. The theory of nonfiction. First things first, we've got to figure out what kind of documentary we're actually making here, right? Because that choice dictates absolutely everything. Take a look at this. This right here is the absolute bedrock of documentary theory. We're talking about theorist Bill Nichols' 6 major modes of nonfiction storytelling. Think of these as the distinct languages of documentary film. And the language you choose is going to fundamentally change how your viewer experiences reality. Let's actually pair these up to see how they work. Say you want to explicitly instruct your audience, maybe build a really clear, direct argument, you're probably going to lean on the expository mode. You know, the classic unseen narrator tying it all together. But what if you're going for visual poetry? Like you just want to capture the chaotic, beautiful mood of a bustling city. That's where the poetic mode shines. It drops the heavy narration and relies entirely on visual rhythms and juxtapositions. Now, this next contrast is super interesting. We've got the observational mode, where you're trying your hardest to make the camera completely invisible. It's that ultimate fly-on-the-wall vibe where you do not intervene, period. But on the exact opposite side of the spectrum, we have the participatory mode. This is where the filmmaker is right there in the mix, actively collaborating on screen. Your interviews, your presence behind the lens, they become a core part of the story. And finally, for the boundary pushers out there, you can actually challenge the medium itself using the reflexive style. This highlights how the film was constructed in the first place, basically forcing the audience to think about the politics of documentary making itself. Or you can go totally subjective with the performative mode. This one is all about diving deep into personal experiences to build a really raw emotional connection with the viewer. Moving right along to Section 2, Ethics and Informed Consent, protecting your participants. Once your style is locked in, we have to talk about the real-world human stakes. You are dealing with real lives here. Okay, brace yourself for this one. A staggering 21% of documentary contributors actually reported they didn't fully understand how their footage was going to be used. Let that sink in. Nearly a quarter. That's from a recent survey by the Center for Media and Social Impact. It proves that just getting a quick, scribbled signature on a release form, yeah, that's not going to cut it. If your participants feel misled, they can withdraw footage, sue you, or completely tank the project's reputation. So, to make sure you stay far away from that statistic, you need to bake these 4 core principles into your workflow. First, transparency. Be totally upfront about who's making the project and where it's going to end up. Second, voluntariness. Absolutely zero coercion here. Give people cooling off periods to change their minds. Third, comprehension. Speak to them in plain, everyday language, not legal gibberish. And lastly, ongoing dialogue. Consent isn't just a checkbox you tick once. If the project shifts, you have to go back and talk to them again. Which leads us to what might be the most crucial distinction in the whole business. Legality asks, can I? But ethics asks, should I? Look, a release form might give you the legal right to use a clip anywhere in the universe forever. But ethically, you have to ask if using it could genuinely harm the person on screen. Our sources actually mention a wild case where an editor slapped some politically charged lyrics over B-roll in a music doc. The musicians were terrified of retaliation and pulled their consent. That single mistake cost the production 12% of its entire budget in reshoots. Ouch. Always, always err on the side of your contributor's safety. Context is everything. All right, Section 3, Shaping the Story Arc, Finding the Narrative. So your subjects are safe, the drives are full of footage, and now the heavy lifting starts. You can't just throw reality at a screen and hope it sticks. You need an anchor. Usually, that means finding a central character to act as a microcosm for your massive theme. You follow them, you hit an inciting incident, but you can't stay zoomed in forever. You have to climb what's called the ladder of abstraction. Basically, you zoom out and ask yourself the ultimate question, so what? Why does this one specific story matter to the rest of the world? You have to connect those dots for the audience. I absolutely love how our source material frames this. Even without actors or a made-up plot, writing and storyboarding are still literally the lifeblood of your documentary. You might not be writing the actual dialogue, but you are absolutely writing the structure. The script is your blueprint. It guarantees you have a logical, driving narrative, a real beginning, middle, and end that actually keeps people in their seats. That brings us to Section 4, the post-production pipeline, from raw to refined. We take that brilliant structural blueprint and head straight into the editing bay. These are the 5 distinct phases of a rock-solid professional post-production workflow. Phase 1 is footage review. Transcribe it, log it, know what you actually have. Phase 2 is story development. And listen, this is the exact spot where most projects completely derail. Eager filmmakers skip the paper edit and just start dragging clips onto a timeline. Big mistake. You end up with a structurally incoherent mess. Do the paper edit. Then comes Phase 3, the offline edit, followed by Phase 4, the online edit for color and sound. And finally, Phase 5, delivery. Let's zoom in on that offline edit phase for a second, because this is where the real magic happens. You're going to go through these specific iterations. First, the assembly cut. This is literally just throwing all your selected clips in order, and it's usually like 2 to 4 times your final runtime. It's a monster. Then you carve that down into a rough cut to fix the overarching structure and pacing. Next is the fine cut, where you finesse the transitions and lock in the music. And finally, the holy grail, picture lock. Once you hit picture lock, that is it. The structure is set in stone, absolutely zero structural changes after this point. Finally, Section 5, fair use and copyright, protecting your film. You've hit picture lock. The film is beautiful. But before you show it to a single soul, we need to talk copyright law. Navigating this stuff can feel like walking through a minefield, especially if you're trying to use news clips or background music without a massive Hollywood budget. But you don't necessarily need a high-priced legal team. We've got this, the Documentary Filmmaker's Statement of Best Practices in Fair Use. Crafted with the Center for Social Media, this document is basically your legal compass. It outlines what the industry universally agrees is a totally reasonable legal application of the fair use doctrine. And here is the philosophical anchor you need to keep in mind. Fair use is not some sketchy legal loophole. It is a fundamental right. It's baked into the social bargain of copyright law to ensure that filmmakers can freely critique and document our shared culture. Society shouldn't lose out on vital stories just because one copyright holder is being greedy or arbitrary, right? So, according to our sources, there are 4 main buckets where you can confidently throw down the fair use card, assuming you're acting in good faith, of course. First, if you are actively critiquing the material itself. Second, if you're quoting a piece of pop culture to illustrate a larger point and adding new value. Third, the accidental stuff. Like if your camera incidentally captures a TV playing in the background of an unstaged scene. You don't have to fake reality just to avoid a lawsuit. And fourth, using copyrighted material in a historical sequence when there is literally no other suitable substitute. Now, when push comes to shove in a courtroom, judges are really just looking for the answer to one massive question. Did you transform the material? Did you give it a completely new purpose and add significant new value instead of just exploiting it for its original intent? The good news? Because docs naturally put media into brand new critical or historical contexts, they actually pass this transformativeness test pretty easily. So there you have it. This explainer just handed you the ultimate filmmaker's roadmap. You know how to pinpoint your theoretical style, how to fiercely protect your participants, build an ironclad story arc, survive the editing room, and shield yourself legally with fair use. All the tools are right here on the table. The only question left is, what reality are you going to reveal?